So some of the things that I know that you are particularly interested in, because we talked to lots of you as you were coming into the Congress, is the use of technology, what's coming up, the current issues with technology, and it's also something, of course, that patients are very interested in. So with me I have Julia Matter from Austria, who chaired a session on technology. So tell us, what's going on, what's new, what's happening?
So in the session I chaired, what I found most interesting is that lots of people now are working with artificial pancreas systems, and they are designing their own artificial pancreas systems and then testing it in clinical practice. And they do observe very, very good glycemic control when they introduce such technology in people with type 1 diabetes.
A very expensive technology?
Well, not more expensive than if you use a current insulin pump plus sensor. So the algorithm is, in that sense, a do-it-yourself algorithm. And I guess that companies in that field also will move to a way of affordable treatment, because if you have, on the one hand side, insulin pumps, sensors, and can design your own artificial pancreas, I don't think that patients are willing or insurance companies are willing to pay more for a pump with algorithm when they, on the other hand side, could also program it themselves.
And that's, of course, something that we see in technology as a lot, is you see something that's very expensive at the beginning, and then, it becomes mass market, and suddenly it becomes affordable to everyone. So maybe artificial pancreas is in that particular box at the moment. What else?
Well, so then they also investigated the effect of CGM, of continuous glucose monitoring, on glycemic control. And what they truly see is that how you administer your insulin, so is it via pump or via MDI therapy, is not that important, but the sensor matters. So if you have a good glycemic control, then usually you're using a sensor, because you see traces all over the day and you can react immediately when you're running into hypo or hyperglycemia.
But presumably it really matters that you have a sensor that is accurate. And I guess, CE marking, that kind of thing, but that's what establishes how accurate those things are.
Yes, so currently we have, in my country, 3 sensors available. And of course, patient preference and kind of the interest to use the most accurate sensor, and they communicate a lot in between themselves, like in online fora, and so they do know what's the most accurate sensor, and then they move forward to kind of get that sensor. And I think it's really a good drive also coming from the patient community that kind of reinforces the manufacturers to produce good products, because otherwise they will not gain kind of that game, right?
And in that sense, actually, these kind of devices are being democratized because they're getting reviews, like kind of TripAdvisor reviews, so that people will actually then, as you say, drive the market. What new areas are we seeing?
So new areas, of course, focus on longevity of the wear time of insulin infusion sets, because patients do not want to exchange their insulin pumps infusion set every 3 days. It's painful, you have to think of it, you have to find the right timing to do it. So we are seeing a lot of research on longevity of these infusion sets. Then we do see new insulin pens that are connected pens, so that you have the information on the insulin dose delivered to your smartphone, for example, and you do not have to note it in a diary manually. That, of course, helps to avoid errors in transmission, that is better legible, and you can trace it also with the time. So I think that's a big improvement. That's something to come up in recent months, I guess. what else did we see?
I was going to ask whether there's an issue in diabetes of what I would call the batteries not included phenomenon. So we all know the thing with printer ink, don't we? That you buy a printer for almost nothing, but the inks are incredibly expensive. So is that something that's being addressed, where you have the cost of the consumables used in the devices actually becoming a major issue for patients and payers?
So I can only talk for my country here, and I don't think that the consumables are the driver. But of course, patients are getting more picky, and they want to have the best choice and maybe want to have also customizable systems. And this is when those I pumps or ACE pumps come in. Those are pumps that are interoperable, so you can have the pump, but combine it maybe with a CGM system from another manufacturer. And also combine it maybe with an algorithm that you prefer. And so it's kind of an open system that you can assemble yourself, all CE marked products then, for example, but assembled at your choice.
So interoperable products with APIs, so that, that can handshake each other, and that's not a problem. So we're going into that now. Take us a bit more into the future. You have a unique view into the technology world in diabetes. Where are we going in the next 3 to 5 years? Get out your crystal ball.
Of course, you never know, like 100% sure where the future is directed, and we have been talking ever since I was in diabetes technology that we are going to have the artificial pancreas in 5 years, and actually we do have it now since last year, so that future finally has come true.
How long was that 5 years?
Those 5 years were actually, from my perspective, 12, but when you ask my boss, about 20. So it has been there in a while, but never really managed to go to the market. And so now we are really here following last year. I guess one of the issues in the future will be still to work on better algorithms for exercise, for pregnancy, because there we are not good enough to control glycemia. There are some thoughts on glucose-sensitive insulins, so that's maybe a bit of like a separate sector from technology, but there is a Japanese group investigating an insulin on an adhesive that's delivered to the body whenever glucose is too high and stops delivery when glucose is too low, so you do not even need the sensor to see the values, but it's kind of with a membrane system delivering insulin at your need, so that would be really revolutionary. There were some experiments in mice that were successful, but of course it's a long way down the road to get it on in human patients then.
Fascinating. Now, I'll tell you an inside secret from a science journalist, is when we were asked when something would be available, we always said 3 to 5 years for everything. But the reality is that in general it takes the technology at least 17 years from research to bedside. So I'm still, however, saying 3 to 5 years because that's my confession for the day. And when I used to host a technology program, we said about electric cars that they would be with us within 3 to 5 years. We said it for 30 years. So I've now been found out. Thank you very much for joining us. A fascinating insight into the world of technology there. And there's much more like this on EASD Live.